Welcome to the Express Boats State of Waterfowl podcast series, presented by Gros Savon Lodge. Join our host, Doug Miller, Executive Operations Manager at Gros Savon Lodge, wildlife biologist and passionate waterfowler, along with co-hosts, world champion duck caller Jim Ronquest and conservationist Kason Short. State of Waterfowl is designed to provide you, our audience, with data, valuable insight, and information gathered from our guests that will allow us to scientifically determine the state of waterfowl, the health of our resource. We understand that the most valuable asset that we have is our resource, and that is waterfowl. Without them, we do not have a season, commerce, purpose. Join us today as we dig deeper into what is the state of waterfowl.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Express Outdoors State of Waterfowl series. I'm your host, Doug Miller, down here in Lake Charles, Louisiana at Gros Savon Lodge. And we're running a little shorthanded this episode. Kason Short couldn't make it with us tonight, but wherever he's at, we know he's thinking about ducks. But we do have Jimbo with us. We got Jimbo's holding the fort down again in Stuttgart. Jimbo, good to have you with us.
Man, as always, Brother Doug, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Did you survive Callapalooza?
Callapalooza is in the can now. It's been here and done and run its course, and we'll worry about it again come next spring. But it was a good event. Had a lot of good folks. Met some cool people. I think we had folks from 16 or 17 different states represented here at the shop. So that was a pretty cool thing.
Well, good deal. I know I enjoyed our last episode. We had Jake Latondras from Nebraska and Grant Hillman representing the Kansas area, and it was really interesting to get those guys' perspective on what was going on in the waterfowl world in that part of the country.
Mm-hmm. I had to leave early because the conversation was getting going pretty good. I thought it was pretty funny that a guy from Kansas was asking a fellow from Nebraska about quit flooding their corn, shortstopping their ducks. I thought that was pretty good.
Anytime you get Grant Hillman and Jake Latondras together, you can talk into the wee hours of the morning. So, anyway, that's right. We have the potential for another one of those episodes today. We've got a really cool guest with us tonight, and I'm gonna just go ahead and start reading some of the resume this guy has. He has waterfowl running through his veins. Tonight we have Mr. George Dunklin with us out of Arkansas. And George is a third-generation rice farmer on the Grand Prairie there in Arkansas. He's owner and operator of Five Oaks Duck Lodge in Humphrey, Arkansas. He's also served on the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, and he's basically volunteered since a teenager for Ducks Unlimited, including being president of DU from 2013 to 2015, and even has an award of 2009 being the Budweiser Conservationist of the Year. So, Mr. Dunklin, I know I just barely scraped the surface of all the things you've done, and you've been a great asset to all the waterfowl world and land managers out there, and just want to welcome you to the State of Waterfowl tonight.
Well, thank you, Doug. And first of all, call me George. Don't call me Mr. Dunklin. I'm getting old, but I'm not that old yet, I don't hope. No, but I'm honored to be here. I appreciate the invitation and glad to talk to you guys. Always love talking about ducks. Well,
good. Well, we're hoping to just pick your brain tonight and get a perspective from somebody that's really spent many hours in the field and in the boardroom and meetings discussing how to improve the habitat. So why don't we start off why don't you tell us a little bit about Five Oaks?
Sure. Five Oaks is something I started in 1983. It was the lodge itself was built by the Memphis Furniture Company. And I was leasing them some land and happened on the land right behind the back door of the lodge. So it was just when they decided to sell it in 83, our family bought it and just kind of backdoored into the lodging business at a necessity. I had to pay the bills, had to pay the loan back. Met a gentleman from Southwest Louisiana that really was a big influence in my life named Hermit Taylor. Well, he's from Natchitoches, but he had a place called Little Pecan Island, not far from where you are, Doug. And Mr. Taylor had been past president of Ducks Unlimited and was running a lodge down there with memberships and really focused on habitat. Had 4 master's degree biologist from LSU that was really managing Little Siberia, managing Little Pecan Island on a holistic management scale. And that just fascinated me. I was only 26 at the time when I met Mr. Taylor, but he made such an impact on me and the importance of habitat. And then really got me to understand the importance of what Ducks Unlimited is doing as far as creating habitat for our flyways. So that was just kind of backdoored into it, and had a wonderful time. We've had 37 duck seasons now under our belt. Met some incredible people along the way that have come through Five Oaks. Just amazing people, great friends that have been created. When I started Five Oaks, I never dreamed I'd ever be a game and fish commissioner or president of Ducks Unlimited. I was just excited to meet a commissioner or a president of Ducks Unlimited, much less be one. And so it's just been a dream come true for me, Doug, and I've been honored to serve in that capacity and look forward to the future.
Well, I know I hear a lot about it. I've got several friends that have been there, and I know, Jim, you get to go there periodically, and you can attest what a great place I hear it is.
Well, it's a cool place, and I get to hear all stories from George and the guys that work with him during duck season. And as you know, Doug, in our business, everybody's checking with everybody. How's your duck hunting? What's going on over here? What's going on there? So, young man that helps out at Georgia during duck season, Daniel Duke, and I talk a lot, and always kind of keeping track of what's going on where. One of the cool things coming up, George, I'd like to get you to talk about is the co-op operation on the student program with UAM that you got started this year. I think that's just an excellent program coming up.
Thanks, Jim. But I'm so excited about this. This is kind of entering the next chapter of my life, and this is a program, a partnership that we signed with the University of Arkansas at Monticello and the Division of Ag at the University of Arkansas to be able to sponsor 4 kids. These kids they just finished their getting a degree, the undergraduate degree this month, but we'll pay their stipend and their tuition along with some research projects that we're going to sponsor along there as well. And at the end of next May, after these 4 kids, they'll start in August, they'll have what's called a graduate certificate. It's kind of what's between the undergraduate and a master's program, if you will. But the idea is that Jody Pagan, who is a biologist that I've been working with since 2005, very, very closely, our concern was, are there going to be land managers coming up that understand the applied side of this waterfowl research and science that's being done, not just the technical side or the academia side, but the applied side. And so we approached Doug Osborne and about this idea, and he loved it. Doug is well known in the waterfowl world from a science side, and so he's actually the director of this new organization. It's actually a public charity that we created, a 501c3 public charity called Five Oaks Ag Research and Education Center. The kids will be living at Little Siberia Lodge, a lodge that we bought 5 years ago. We kind of redid it and kind of formed it into kind of a dormitory and lab space for them over there. And it sits right on a bluff overlooking the Little Siberia Reservoir, which is just an incredible wetland complex that we've been working on since we bought the property. So these kids will be coming in and working with our crew, with Daniel and Jody and others, along with their professors and the research. And hopefully when they finish, they'll be ready. They'll be ready for the next step. Next year will be an internship. Probably one will stay with Five Oaks. The other, Jody's going to help find internships with other folks. And so that's the goal, is to try to educate these kids where they get in the world. They're real world managers. They want to live out here. They want to do what we do and live in this part of the world, and they'll be ready to go after a couple of years of this.
That is super cool to hear, because coming from myself, being a wildlife management student, growing up, I just felt like, we got the basics in school, but we didn't really have any hands-on field knowledge, and everything that the majority of what I know today has just been hard knocks being in the field for the last 30 years. But to have the opportunity to go straight from the classroom to something like that just is a tremendous opportunity. It's got to be a really good boost in the arm for duck management to have some guys out there that are that age and really learning from a scientific standpoint of what's best to do and what not to do. So really applaud you for creating that. That's a cool position. I wish I'd have had that opportunity.
And so do I. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
We're going to learn so much from our mistakes in the past and be able to see what we've done to change those. And if we can start over again, if we can start fresh. But that's where you always learn the most from, is from your mistakes. And then to be able to operate a tractor or how to drain a rice field or some of the things that we take for granted that they've never been exposed to. Actually, first class was selected by Doug and Jody, and there's two girls and 2 boys. And so it's we love seeing the women get involved in this field. And there was 9 kids that came out that spent 4 days with us going through that were auditioning for the 4 slots. And they're all wonderful kids, but 4 of them kind of stood above the rest that were ready to go. And so we're excited. Okay, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to really add another element to Five Oaks, what we do, and really in the long run, really put some really great land managers out there in the field.
You mentioned Jody Pagan's name, and I know hunting with Jimbo and the other guys there in Arkansas, it's hard to make a trip up there in one of the green tree reservoirs without somebody mentioning his name. And I know you guys, y'all had a really good relationship with what he did a lot of work on your place there at Five Oaks. Won't you just briefly just tell us some of the things Jody's done? He's, from what I've heard, he's come a pretty renowned green timber manager, I guess would be the lack of a better word.
Yeah, that is the proper way to describe him. He is a great green tree manager. He's learned from some wonderful folks like Lee Frederickson, Mickey Heitmeyer, Tom Foti, and many others. I hate to start naming names because I'll leave out some of his mentors, but Jody's extremely bright gentleman that really looks at the science. But I'll tell you what makes Jody unique among a lot of biologists. Jody's a killer. The guy is a phenomenal hunter as well. And so he's able to take all these different knowledges he's had from the science side to the hunting side, and really put it in our formula here at Five Oaks to make it really work. When he first came in, we made some dramatic changes. I have been reading about a lot of what Mickey Heitmeyer had done, and had been the work, the study that he did at Biomeda. And I knew that we needed to change what we had, our methodologies in flooding our properties. And Jody came in and we made those changes. I think my guides, when they first met him and looked at him and said what we're going to do, looked at him and he was crazy. But we changed the way that we flood. We try to mimic more natural flooding regimes as opposed to just flooding everything up and having everything ready November 1st, or by the first day of duck season be 100% finished. We're still pumping all the way in the last week of the season. We have some cherry bark ridges back here behind the lodge that we don't even put water. We just flash water on there the last 10 to 14 days and then take it right off. And it's amazing how quickly those ducks, they'll just respond that quick within a day or 2. But always protecting the resource. That's number one. Always protecting those trees to make sure that they're going to still be here next year and also still be providing the mass crop that these birds desperately need.
You know, George, talking about the Biomeda Basin and the trees there at the lodge and in Biomeda. I know you've been recently on the Forestry Commission, and been a lot of conversations we've had on the Biomeda project in the future of the Biomeda Basin and its bottomland hardwoods. Can you speak to the future of what we need to do to help propagate those woods to make sure they're going to be there for future generations like they've been there for us?
Well, we had a tour last week, Jimbo, and Tom Foti, the scientist that's been hired by Game and Fish to talk about the current health of Biomeda, revealed something that I did not realize. About 75% of the trees there, the red oak component trees, the willow, the nuttall component, really the cherry bark and and Nuttall, maybe one, is that there's some serious danger of not making it 5 to 10 more years. We've seen some massive die off of trees in Hurricane and some other WMAs. Biomeda has not had a massive die off, but it's set up to possibly have one at some point. Not probably a whole lot we can do for those. What we got to start thinking about it is 50 to 100 years down the road. How can we get the regeneration of oak trees that need to be in that forest? Otherwise, we'll see the composition of the trees change to more overcup and green ash and swamp privet and water tolerant trees than we have now, which, as you know, provide very little food for the ducks. So the first one things they talked about was simply the plumbing. We're going to have to change the way that the place has been designed. Biomeda was designed to hold water, not to hold water for duck hunters. It wasn't designed to try to mimic Mother Nature and how in a riverine system or a backwater swamp type system. And so the whole mindset has to be changed. And that's going to be an outreach and education issue for our hunters in Arkansas to accept that it's going to be a change. If we want a red oak component in these woods 100 years from now, we're going to have to change the way that we flood all these GTRs. One of the things that we hope that we're going to gain knowledge out of Five Oaks Ag Research and Education Center is how best to be able to get that regeneration. What's going to be the methodologies, the science, what are these kids and the researchers from UAM, and we hope other universities will work with us as well, Mississippi State, LSU, Auburn, some of these others, but try to get the science behind what is the proper way of doing this. This is going to take a few years, I think, to get some of those ideas ready to go. And then the commission at that point in time will have to make some big decisions about how Biomeda is flooded, how Biomeda, or all these public areas. There's about 50 to 60,000 acres of green tree reservoirs that the Game of Fish manages. But this doesn't just apply to just Biomeda or the public areas. This also applies to all the private areas as well. And there'll be some big decisions made in how you hunt these places, how you flood them. There's going to be some difficult decisions. If we don't change, I'm scared that the long-term outlook does not look good. And certainly the trend that we're seeing, and again, Hurricane, I toured it last fall, and it'll make you cry looking at those big, beautiful Nuttall oak trees just dead as a hammer. Rivers have changed, hydraulics changed, everything's changed in the floodplain over the last 50, 60 years. And so we've got to change that.
You're right. And it's not just not the Biomeda Basin, it's just the White River bottoms, Cache River bottoms, Black River bottoms. We got the same thing going on here. So I kind of wonder, there's been talk about the Biomeda pump project and a lot of conversations about what to do in the future. One, how do we make those decisions and how do we fund that? Is that funding going to be, is there Pittman Robertson money there? You've Game Fish money there? How do you foresee that happening?
Well, we have a real immediate concern right now is Little Biomeda that goes into that pump station you're talking about at Little Biomeda at Radell. That Little Biomeda channel, which the Corps of Engineers has designed it, has the designs for it to be cleaned out, to get that, to open that drainage back up. Right now, the Biomeda Wildlife Management Area is flooded from salt bile, and eventually salt bile runs into Little Biomeda. Well, sometime years and years ago, I can't find anybody to know when it happened, they cut these ditches or the wasteways over to Big Biomeda. So the whole watershed, which is about 800,000 acres, goes through Big Biomeda, where Little Biomeda, where it used to go, is basically cut off that drainage. So the first step is just opening that up, and Commission has been talking about that, trying to get that done. They've been trying to get funding, and that's about a $10 million project. I'm hoping with some of the money that's just come from Rescue America funds, that are, Arkansas is getting ready to get $5 billion getting ready to drop. And I've talked to the Secretary of Ag here, West Ward, about it. I've talked to our Senator John Bozeman about it, both these conversations in the last week, about how we can maybe tap into some of this stimulus money that's coming our way. it's going because everybody's going to be fighting for that money. But I think we can make a very good argument, Jimbo, in the waterfowl world. And this isn't just to Arkansas. This is the whole Mississippi flyway we're talking about. I mean, the amount of mallards that overwinter here in Arkansas is more than any other state. And so I think we have a very good argument to make that some of these funds should go to helping us get the water off these projects. The rivers have changed. We've got, in the late 60s, we had the navigation project coming to the Arkansas River, which changed the dynamics of that river. We've got tiling in the Midwest. Now it's pushing water down the Mississippi faster than ever, which backs up the White, which backs up the Arkansas. When you back up the Arkansas, it backs up Alameda. The dynamics of all this has changed so dramatically. The Big Alameda floodgate, both Big Alameda and Little Alameda built back in the 20s. Things have changed dramatically in the 20s. You can make the argument that both those gates should be brought up to today's standards. And of course, we got the pump at Little Alameda, but we can make the argument there should be a pump at Big Alameda as well, especially with the Arkansas River has changed. So there's a lot of money coming to Arkansas in the stimulus. We don't know what the infrastructure program is going to have as well, but they're talking about a couple $1 billion there. I mean, a couple $1 trillion, billion and all kind of runs together when you start throwing these numbers around that the government is. But we ought to really fight for our fair share to really help these critical resources. And could make the same argument, Doug, down your part of the world with the Gulf Coast. 20% of our birds overwinter down there, and we're losing habitat down there every day. So we're all connected all the way up and down these flyways. We're all connected, and we got to look at this.
Absolutely. And you've discussed some very project specific in the Arkansas, Missouri area that are extremely important to the waterfowl. But if you don't mind, let's maybe back up to a little more broad brush and look at the flyway as a whole. What is your opinion? I've heard you say the word change multiple times again tonight. It just seems to be a reoccurring word. What do you feel is happening with the health of the duck population as a whole? I guess I know that's a broad question, but are you seeing any changes in duck population? Do we have issues with the number of ducks? Are we not seeing them, or what do you think's going on with ducks themselves?
Well, again, I know we didn't count ducks last May. I don't think we counted them this year. First of all, Fish and Wildlife Service have been counting ducks since 1955, with the exception of last year. So I got to take those numbers for granted. I don't have any evidence to say that those are wrong or right. So then if we drill it down to what, as individuals, what we see with our own eyes, then I think individually in your own places, you are probably seeing different things. I know in my 40 years I've been here, since I graduated college, 41 now, just the agricultural landscape has changed so much, where we used to hunt ducks as kids in rice fields and pits, and where we had a lot of waste grain and varieties. These varieties didn't come off until middle September, and we had smaller combines, and all that's changed. I mean, we got zero gray, we got more. If the rice industry hadn't changed, it wouldn't be here. So those changes were made as necessary. So it's just where you are and what you see. We're fortunate in the habitat we have on Five Oaks. We see a lot of ducks. We haven't seen the changes that I read and hear about that other people are. But we work at this every day, all year long, and we. Like the little Siberia project I mentioned a few minutes ago, we took a 600-acre reservoir that had been used for fishing and hunting, and they kept it deep for the last 30 years, and so it became sterile. So we drained it. We drained the reservoir, and it just came back in smartweed and barnyard grass, just incredible. It hadn't seen sunlight since 1945, and once we released it, it just came. Well, it became incredible how many birds responded just that quick. This is an area where Arkansas River came through this land 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, and those birds responded very quickly. So it depends on where you are and what your habitat is like. To me, the health, I've just got to take what the Fish and Wildlife takes us for granted. Again, I have no evidence to change anything. So I think the ducks are there. Now, where they are in the flyway, I think the flyways are the same, but they're broad flyways. And so when you start going down into the flyways, it's just where you are. So it always comes back to what Mr. Taylor taught me a long time ago. It's always about the habitat and what you have.
That's
So
hard to beat that statement. No, I just comment. It's hard to beat that statement. It's all about the habitat. You take care of the resource will be there to take care of you.
that might be an idea for a bumper sticker, huh?
Sounds good.
So in your years with DU, especially in your tenure as president, was there any one thing habitat wise that really shocked you, or you feel that's just really extremely important for the future management of waterfowl?
I will. And I was not familiar with the boreal forest until I became president, and I actually toured it 8 years ago next month in these float plains. The boreal forest is where about a third of our continental flyway is population of ducks is actually bred. And it kind of acts as the sponge for us when the prairies get dry, like they are right now, as I understand. Both the U.S. prairies and the Canadian prairies are both dry. The boreal forest is kind of it's a billion, gosh, what is it? 1.6 billion acres, just kind of south of the Arctic Circle. We flew into Yellowknife in the Northwest Territory to fly, and I saw, and DU took a challenge on with the Pew Charitable Trust to start preserving those forever. And the goal was to preserve 1 billion acres. We're at about 800 million acres today. And that started in the last 10 years with those folks. And we can do that at 50 cents an acre as far as preserving that land, as opposed to the prairies in Canada, which is about $300 an acre. So 50 cents versus 300. So, if we'd had the foresight, years ago, we have done the same thing at the prairies, where you could get the easements on these properties and keep them in the native state. And so that was the biggest surprise when I got in, to see how important the boreal forest was. I just wasn't familiar with it, as familiar with it as I should have been.
Yeah, and we've actually learned that through the State of Waterfowl series, that those ducks that, like you said, that when the Saskatchewan area is dry, at least it's a relief valve for those ducks to move up. And it sounds like they're going to be using that this year. It's going to be a really important area. So,
yeah, I think you're exactly right, Doug. But it is important, and waterfowl hunters and managers really need to understand. The better they can understand the dynamics. Again, I've been very fortunate to be exposed from the boreal all the way down to the Yucatan habitat, but then you understand the dynamics. It's a waterfowl. They're a short-lived species, so they're just dynamic in nature. We have ups and downs in their populations based on the habitat they have, and that's why we haven't lost them. When you look at the 30s, we had the drought in the 30s that we thought ducks were gone forever. Well, they came back. The 50s and 60s and the 80s and 90s, the early 90s. Each one of those times, those dry areas, actually, what you learn from the scientists, those wetlands and the prairies need those dry times to be able to come back and explode in good, when the snow and the water comes back. They need to come back, and that explodes with great insects and bugs and all the kind of grasses that they need to survive. And then the duck population, ducks and geese and all short-lived species can just explode in population, because they'll have 12 to 15 in their clutch at one time. They might not have any the year before, but then boom, you come back and you put millions of ducks. So that's just the dynamic nature of this sport. And so when I do read about all these theories, conspiracy theories are out there, there's no short-term or there's no quick fix that we have for populations. This is a long-term game, and we got to keep focusing on the habitat, on preserving these habitats, and making sure when we do come out of dry times that we still have the habitat for these birds to respond back to.
So you mentioned conspiracy theories, and I hear it all the time down here in South Louisiana. There's a perception that, the guys at DU just have ruined it all the way up the flyaway for us, and we're suffering down here on the south end. What do you, as a career DU guy, what do you tell a guy like that from Louisiana that thinks DU is to blame for all the issues we have?
Well, I can, the guy that I followed as president was John Newman. That was 8 years ago yesterday, to be in fact. John was in Covington, Louisiana. So, John has a great place right there, not far from New Orleans. And of course, he wants to see ducks get down to South Louisiana. I want to see them get to Arkansas, obviously. We've had several Southern presidents. We got a president from Mississippi. We've had our president, Rogers Hoyt, from Texas. So, there's no, we want to see the birds go all the way. We want to see, we'd love if every DU member and every duck hunter had a great season every year and every time they go out. But, that's just not the way it works. And, personally, I think a big change, certainly since I'm 64 years old. I remember 1968 when I was 12, we had a 20-day duck season. So opened December 5th, closed December 25th. But what we didn't have back in those days, we didn't have social media. We didn't have a way for people to vent their frustrations instantly out there in the world. And all of a sudden what somebody says in South Louisiana or Kansas becomes gospel without any science, anything to back it up. And so that's been, I think, the challenge for all of us in the waterfowl world is how we manage expectations and how do we manage those kind of things. I mean, I get it. People get frustrated when you go out and you can't kill it. You don't have a good duck hunt. But man, that's just part of hunting. And we certainly don't want to go where you have to release your own birds and grow your own birds. We know that the sport's over basically at that point, as we know it and love it today. So that's just kind of part of what kind of comes with it. So we still got to keep the faith in conservation organizations like Ducks Unlimited and many others. They're not the only one. All these state agencies to continue to follow the science and do what's the right thing. And hopefully public properties and private landowners will do the same. We're all connected in this thing together.
George, this might be kind of a little bit of a redundant question, but thinking about all the stuff you just discussed, how do you see the future of waterfowling in our part of the world?
Well, the future is what concerns me because we're losing, if you look at licensed stamp sales, Jimbo, we're losing stamps, we're losing hunters. And we're getting ready to, I think this is going to be what, our 24th year of 60-day of a liberal season, or maybe a 25th year. I think 1997. It's 97, I think, was our first year. Anyway, we've got a whole generation now, a full generation that knows nothing of, like I went through a 20-day duck season, know nothing of 30-day duck seasons that we went in the late 80s and early 90s. I mean, it costs just the same to get prepared for a 30-day duck season as it does a 60-day duck season. And we're overdue for a drought. We're long overdue for a very serious drought. I'm scared that we're going to lose that support. If we lose the duck hunter, we lose the support for the habitat, and we lose support for the sport. The paradox of the deal is that if we just quit hunting ducks, we know the ducks would disappear because we're not going to have the habitat to support them. So we've got to have hunters, because they're the ones that provide the license sales, the support to conservation organizations, the Pittman Robinson funds are so desperately needed. All those things come in, and it's that cumulative aggregate effect that's the reason that we still have what we have today. So I'm hoping, and when we do go through another drought, and we do, and you've seen the matrix like I have, I mean, it's either going to be 60, 45, or 30 days. That 45-day band is pretty narrow to hit. And if we go back to 30 days, I mean, I'm scared we're going to lose some hunters that we might not, and we'll lose that support. And that's when we need the support more than ever, is when it gets dry and the prairies get dry and we start losing land to crops. And commodity prices are starting to ease back up now. That always concerns you as far as good for the farmers, but we gotta save those areas up there in the prairies, those native grasses, those areas that are so critical our long term. And there's a lot of changes that have happened that we got to continue showing support for. Public policy support out of Washington, D.C. is critical, and you got to have people, voters, to get things to happen there. And those people are our duck hunters that really provide the support. When we go to, as Ducks Unlimited, when we go to Washington, we don't just go as George Dunklin or any other volunteer. We were representing 750,000 members of our organization that vote both right and left, that vote both for Democrat and Republican. We go up there as a neutral, and that we're there representing the best science for a resource that's very important to our country. That's why we've been as effective as we have in the public policy arena, and the programs that have come down out of Washington.
George, the fact that we're going into a second year of no duck count due to COVID and restrictions in Canada, does that lack of data make you nervous for as managing seasons?
Talking to Luke Naylor, who's our waterfowl coordinator here in Arkansas, who sits on those important flyway council committees. Talking personally probably would, but talking to Luke kind of calms me down a little bit, because they know the science, they know those long-term projections, and they know how many ducks that we take out, and they can see it. So because of Luke's words, I'm really not that concerned. But I'm hoping we don't have a serious change next year that catches us by surprise. We are dry, we know right now, in the prairies, but I'm hoping that it will work itself out.
So, we talked about it being dry on the prairies, and down here in South Louisiana, we just been inundated with rain lately. You've probably seen us on the news. So
Yeah.
Our rice farmers in this part of the country are struggling with all the issues associated with that. What's going on in your part of the world as far as the rice farmers and that stuff? Are they going to have a good year this year for production? Or
Yeah, our acres are down a little bit this year. Our production, the crops pretty much for the most part been planted, and we are wet, but nothing like you poor guys in South Louisiana. Y'all just been getting inundated with rain after rain after rain. We're in pretty good shape here, I would think. Don't you think, Jimbo? Just looking around and looking at our crops and other, not hearing a lot of complaining. Yeah.
No, I'm not either. There's a few folks, we missed that rain last week, which helped a lot of guys get caught up on some beans and in some of the wetter rice areas. And a lot of guys are about ready for a shower, wouldn't hurt nothing. But I think we are in good shape. And as far as early rice production, even though our acres are down, hopefully we can get a good crop and get some duck energy days back on the prairie. I think that's one thing that's hurting us immensely in this part of the world, is our duck energy days are down, for a variety of reasons, rice varieties, corn varieties, people getting in and making the crop sooner. It's that much more important to try to substitute that with some moist soil or natural foods, or even taking a note from Doug's part of the world, double cropping rice is even a better opportunity as we move into that. I think will be awesome.
Jim, I hope it future farm bills that we have the ability to provide incentives in those farm bills for landowners and farmers to provide that necessary habitat for the wintertime, instead of going and working that field. But we've got either through equip or whatever the mechanism or vehicle would be, that we can make the argument to the Department of Ag and to our policymakers that we need to reward these guys. We need to reward the farmer, the landowner that's putting this back. And it's all about conservation. It's about cleaner water. It's about more ducks. And so, I know that we'll be working that DU and other organizations that we work with on conservation measures that will hopefully be able to get something. I know there's some programs out there being discussed now, and it'd be great, especially like a ratoon crop, on the rice. If we can do that without penalizing a guy that goes out there and, we arrest him for hunting over a ratoon crop and he is there. It's just kind of crazy. But find some common sense solutions to these serious problems. and reward the landowner, the guy out there that's 75% of the land's in private ownership. And if we want them to do something, we need to incentivize them, whether that's wherever that is in our country.
I totally agree. I think we're going to have to, if we want to see things get back to what they once were. Definitely going to be important. So coming towards the end here, Doug, you probably got some stuff too, but I think George has pretty well wrapped it up. But I'm going to ask you to summarize. How would you discuss or say the state of waterfowl currently in the state of Arkansas, or the U.S. for that matter?
Is that to me, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you look at duck stamp sales in Arkansas last year, we had 100. I think we're a little over 100,000. We're back where we were in 1999 when the robo duck and everything just came perfectly together in '99. So if you look at it from that angle, it doesn't look bad. If you go to Max or R&T, look, a lot of people there. So we're looking at that, but hearing too many complaints, too many things that are not healthy from people that are having poor hunts. We need more public areas, but not just a place to hunt, but a place to have a good quality hunt in a public area. We're the overcrowding and those kind of things you're saying. Those are real. I realize that. And when we start limiting out of state people and we start dividing people, I don't like the idea that we put people in certain classes or certain areas. So we've got to look at either more land or more areas for people to hunt and get the quality up as land managers. But there's an old saying we have in the conservation world. If you want conservation without money, it's just conversation, and there's a lot of truth to that. And so it's going to take dollars. It's going to take dollars from, and we just went through the state legislature here, Doug. You probably don't realize this, but we tried, the Game and Fish tried to raise the price of a resident license here, and we had a couple of state legislators that were just dead against it and basically blocked it. And it was going to mean about $6 million more a year for Game and Fish. It was just raising the hunting license in Arkansas has not been raised since 1992. The fishing license is 1984, and just trying to get it up to where it should, still not as high as Louisiana or Mississippi, some of other states, but it got defeated. And that's $6 million a year, where you take that and go with Pittman Robinson dollars, and that's all of a sudden you can leverage that 6 million to 24 million, and you see what I'm talking about. It's just a lot of we've got to be smarter at what we're doing. So I was very disappointed in our state legislation not to go along with that. That's that's something that should have been a no-brainer. It's just the cost of going to a movie in 1984 was $4. What it costs a lot more today to go to a movie. Just the price of admission to this, and so we're asking very little from the public and the private landowners to be able to. We're just going to have to come up with more money. At the end of the day, it's going to take money to do this, to get back what we hope, that whatever we think it should be. That's the other thing, is managing expectations for people.
And that's what I was kind of going to ask, is you being a past commissioner and with DU, how do we educate folks to understand that? It's everybody hears we need more money, it takes money to do this, but how do we educate folks to where they really understand the importance of that?
Will they take their time and read a DU magazine? There's excellent articles in here, science articles that explain the problems and what can be done. Or are they going to listen to conspiracy theories that somebody on the internet has started in some chat room or whatever? You and I can't control that, but we can't ever stop educating and outreach to the public, and it just can't stop. We just got to continue trying to educate the public on the importance of habitat, and the importance of doing the right things, the importance of the money, the importance of water control, importance of all these things that we're doing that we're talking about. We just got to, one of the things that our new public charity that we started, Five Oaks Ag, research and education. We plan to have field days. One that kind of modeling this a little bit off of is Tall Timbers out in Georgia and Florida, where they do this for quail. And I've been out to a field day that they've held, and they had the one I went to a couple of years ago. There was 300 people there that day learning about quail habitat, how to burn the forest, the benefits those all bring. Jimbo, I think we just got to continue your show that you do, all these kind of shows that we continue talking about. Here's the fact, here's the science behind it. Here's what we got to do to get to where we want to get to. Or, if some guy just wants to complain, they just, you hope that we can be louder than they are, and that the policymakers and the people that really care about the future we got their ear, and that they will understand what we're trying to accomplish.
Well said.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting time to visit with you, George, and get your perspective on things. I know you've seen a lot in your career. I think, a lot of our people, including myself, kind of get tunneled in vision in a box living in your one area, and we try to judge the entire flyway in the whole country based on what we see in our own backyard. And it's a big picture item when you got a bird that crosses 3 different countries, and there's a lot that goes into this, and you really made a lot of good statements. And we keep hearing the word habitat, and things are changing daily. So we appreciate all you've done in your career and what you're planning on doing, especially there at Five Oaks, and you and Jody and all the guys there in Arkansas with what you're trying to do to preserve the habitat. Jim, you got any closing comments or anything we missed?
I don't know that I have anything we missed, but I had a conference call this morning with a couple guys that we mentioned earlier, with Mickey Heitmeyer and Dr. Mike Brasher with DU. And Mike said a good one, talking about migration, that ducks aren't obligated to come to us. And I think sometimes we've got to keep that in mind.
Good point.
Jim, that is a great statement. One thing we talked about habitat. One thing we didn't talk about was weather. And I heard Tom Mormon, a past chief scientist for Ducks Unlimited, on a podcast here a few weeks ago, talk about the weather last year, which he described it as being stale. And I thought that was a great, we can't do, if it's, as you say, the ducks aren't obligated to come to Arkansas or Louisiana. If there's nothing to the north of them to force them to move, they're not going to move. It's just as simple as that.
Along with not having habitat in Arkansas, Louisiana for them to want to come to. I think there's a combined effort there that's costing us some ducks. And we're still doing very well harvest-wise. When you look at the harvest numbers, you think, man, I don't know. But public perception is such that they're not as many as they used to. And I think that's a combination of 1, weather, and 2, groceries. And again, there's nothing scientific about that observation, but I believe they sure seem to work together.
I agree with you, Jimbo. Absolutely. But Doug, thank y'all for having me on the show to at least let me present my thoughts and views, whatever they're worth. But I do appreciate that greatly.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for all your service in the world of waterfowl. And we can't forget the guys at Express Boats for having the vision to allow us to put this educational series on. And we hope everybody continues to share this information, and hopefully we can continue to grow the platform. And here we are just trying to discuss what's going on and educate people. So again, thank you, Mr. George. Thanks, Jimbo. Kaysen, we missed you out there, buddy. Hope you're not working too hard this evening on the rice farm. And hope everyone tunes into our next episode. So good luck, good night, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Be sure to invite your friends to listen, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We all want to know, what is the state of waterfowl?